A wrong view of Jesus, communicated by many Christians, unfortunately, is the primary evangelism tool for Islam.
He says in other parts of the gospel he doesn't understand. He doesn't know the date of the end, for example, the last day. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. You may want to talk about kenosis at this point, but that really doesn't get you out of the problem. That's a different subject. And he's all powerful, and yet he's weak. But you have one person, so not dealing with a split personality. You had two consciousnesses in one being. It's such a bizarre idea that has no logical coherence. That is the reason why there are lots of people who are atheists, and even more are Muslims, because a Muslim understanding is, yes, Jesus was an incredible human being, a holy man, a prophet, a Messiah, born of a Virgin Mary.
Before becoming man, Paul in Philippians 2 said that Jesus was in the form of God, and that he did not consider equality with God something to be grasped. In other words, he had it intrinsically. Paul here is speaking about the Son of God in Old Testament times. That he was in the form of God, the morphe of God, signifies how the Son was observed by others. The Son appeared as God. He was the image of the invisible God as God's representative, since God himself cannot be seen. But the Son's form was visible to mankind on distinct occasions. When the Son was in this state, he shared equality with his Father in nature. Remember, the Father beget his Son, and the principle we see in the very beginning of the Bible, Genesis 1, is that kind begets like kind. Thus the Son's nature was divine as the Father's nature is divine. Ontological equality between the Father and Son is based on the principle that everything that reproduces does so after its kind. However, while the Son shared an intrinsic equality with his Father in nature, he was still inferior to his Father in rank. This is because a father gives origin and existence to his son and is necessarily prior to him, thus superior to him. In Jewish thinking, no one could be equal with God in rank. The Jews never thought Jesus was claiming that. Their anger was kindled when Jesus claimed that God was his own Father, John chapter 5. The Jews knew full well the implication of such a statement. Jesus was unabashedly claiming sameness of kind with his Father. Now it's when the Son was in this condition, in the form of God, equal with his Father in nature, an amazing historical event occurred that has shaped human history as we know it. What was it? The Son emptied himself. It's called kenosis. He emptied himself by taking the form of a slave and becoming in the likeness of men. Many attempt to deny the force of this passage and its implications, claiming it wasn't a literal emptying, but simply an adding of humanity to an existing divine nature. The result being, they assert, the Son had two natures, divine and human. This is absolutely contrary to Paul's point in Philippians 2. And the larger problem is it's driven primarily by unsubstantiated philosophical axioms about what the divine nature can and cannot do. Can it change? Can it transform into something else? Who should we believe? The philosophy and wisdom of man, or that of inspired scripture? According to Paul, taking the form of a slave and becoming in the likeness of men was the immediate result of the Son's self-emptying. In other words, instead of being in the form of God, he was now in the form of a slave. That's a 180-degree diminishment of role and rank. Instead of sharing equality with God in nature, he became in the likeness of men. That's a complete change in ontology, a completely new state of being. Jesus emptied himself of his equality with God to become fully human, to live the human experience, and to reverse the effect of death initiated by the first man, Adam. Trinitarians, they scoff at this and claim that the Son merely added flesh to his divinity. Not only is this a ghastly interpretive error, but it nullifies the supreme sacrifice of the Father and Son and what they both were willing to give up for the redemption of mankind. The Father, his only begotten Son. The Son, his nature and divine communion with his Father. That's a true sacrifice, and that's the true gospel.